What's going on, everyone? I'm back, and today we'll be looking at the perfect theoretical mock draft. Now, I did something pretty similar to this last year, and honestly, this is one of my favorite exercises to do because it allows me to make every single pick for every single team in a 12-team PPR format. And basically, I'm going to go ahead, do this for 8 rounds. The roster is going to include 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, a flex, and then 1 bench spot. I think 8 rounds will be plenty to go ahead and put our core roster together and then be able to compare the results. And next to each player selection, I'm going to include their bye weeks just for a little bit more information. But enough of that, let's get right into it. Kicking off all of this, in the first pick to be made, I've got Ezekiel Elliott at number 1. And honestly, it's really close between Zeke and another guy in David Johnson with the first pick overall. Because honestly, I think David Johnson is in a league of his own when it comes to pass catching abilities, but the reason I've got Zeke here, and not only above DJ, but above all the other top 4 guys, is I honestly think at the end of the season, his usage is going to be higher than all of those guys. And honestly, I can't blame you if you go with any of the other top 4 running backs here. It all comes down to personal preference. Mine just happens to be Ezekiel Elliott. When it's all said and done, I think they will all be studs. Now, looking at team number 2, I'm going David Johnson, and I mentioned him before. If he's not number 1, he's number 2 for me. And with DJ, he's going to be as close as you can get to 1,000 yards rushing and 1,000 yards receiving for the running back position. Maybe him and LeVeon Bell, but personally, I prefer David Johnson. I think it's no coincidence that he was the consensus number 1 pick last year, and the fact that he was pretty much hurt for the entire season and now is still in the conversation for a top 4 pick speaks volumes to me. Going to team number 3, LeVeon Bell, the selection here. And with Bell, I think him and David Johnson are the 2 best pass-catching running backs in the NFL. The only reason that I have LeVeon Bell slightly lower is I think he has some more off-the-field concerns, which haven't really been a factor as of late. But more so than anything, the offense he's on, he has to contend with the best wide receiver in football in Antonio Brown, and with Juju Smith-Schuster, who has chemistry that I think is really growing with Big Ben Roethlisberger. But when it's all said and done, I do expect LeVeon Bell without an issue to be a top 4 running back in fantasy. Now, going to team number 4, Todd Gurley, the last of the top 4 guys, maybe a little bit too low considering what he did last year. But look, I do think the Rams offense is going to take a little bit of a step back, and I think teams are going to start to figure them out to some degree. Also, the addition of Brandon Cooks, the maturation of a Cooper Kupp are going to take away some targets from Todd Gurley. That's why I have him over here, but again, I still think he finishes as a top 4 guy easy. Now, going to team number 5, Saquon Barkley, and maybe a little bit of a surprise that it's not someone like Antonio Brown. You'll definitely see his name in a little bit here, but I just am of the preference that running backs early in the first part of the first round of these drafts, that's the way to do it. I think they're the ones that are really going to carry your squad because with them you can get a combination of a running back number 1 and a wide receiver all into one player. And Barkley falls in that category to me. You don't become the 2nd pick overall in the NFL draft in now's day and age, especially at the running back position, if you're not going to get some extremely high usage. The Giants upgraded that offensive line, and Barkley's going to get some pass attempts as well. Then going to team number 6, speaking of a guy that's going to get plenty of attempts in the passing game, Alvin Kamara. And it was really close here for me whether to go the transition to Antonio Brown, but ultimately I went with Kamara because, again, he showed a lot of flashes last year. Mark Ingram won't be there for the first 4 games. Now, I will say if this wasn't PPR, I would probably have Kamara towards the end of the first round. But for the most part, I think he picks up where he left off. It'll be interesting to kind of track his progression while Ingram was suspended then versus once Ingram comes back. But he was able to do it last year once Ingram was there. The big thing will be the touchdown potential for Alvin Kamara. Then getting team number 7, this is where I finally have Antonio Brown. And at this point, it becomes just a value pick because I think he's the next best available player by far, to be honest with you. And Antonio Brown, it's hard not to love him. He can do everything and anything. He's Big Ben's favorite target. He can go for the deep ball. He gets plenty of receptions, and he's a target in the red zone. There's not really much you could ask for, and he'll probably be the #1 wide receiver in fantasy again. Going to team number 8, I've got Melvin Gordon. And Gordon, not quite one of these elite running backs, but I do think he will have a pretty good year, especially in PPR-wise. He gets a nice little bump for his pass-catching abilities. But the big selling point here for me is that he is in his 5th-year option. This is a contract year, so if he wants to go ahead and prove his value for whether it's the Chargers or another team moving forward, he needs to have a great year, so he'll definitely be motivated. And on top of that, Chargers know they might not necessarily have him next year, so I do think they're going to try and get the most bang out of their buck for Melvin Gordon. Then going to team number 9, I've got Dalvin Cook. And Cook to me is a guy that would be probably 3 or 4 spots higher if he hadn't sustained that ACL injury last year, because he was on pace to be the best rookie running back last year, even better than Alvin Kamara in my opinion, but then obviously goes out for the year with the ACL. So that's the main reason why I have him a little bit lower than some of those guys, but I am elevating him because Kirk Cousins is joining that offense, and I think that's going to help everybody, Dalvin Cook included. Then team number 10, Leonard Fournette, and I realize Fournette is more of a standard suited running back, but look, the situation in Jacksonville suits itself perfectly for what Fournette does. Game managing quarterback in Blake Bortles, extremely good offensive line, extremely good defense that's going to set up the offense in short field situations. That's going to let Leonard Fournette thrive and ultimately I think finish as a top 10 running back. Then going to team number 11, Kareem Hunt with the second to last pick. Look, I've been on record saying I'm a little bit wary of Kareem Hunt. If there's any of the top named running backs to kind of disappoint you, it'd be Kareem Hunt. And we saw it last year. He went through spurts. He was really good, then really bad, then pretty good again. I think it'll come down to, are the Chiefs committed to running the football? Because when they gave Kareem Hunt high usage last year, that's when he had his biggest outputs. That's when the Chiefs went on their winning streaks. And then when they went away from that, that's when they were on a losing streak. And then when they went back to it, that's when they started winning again. So if they can go ahead and give Kareem Hunt his carries, I think he does have a nice ceiling. Now with the last pick in the first round, I'm going DeAndre Hopkins. And after this point, pretty much right after Hunt for me, I go back to the wide receivers. I think they're the best available option. Don't want to necessarily reach on a running back that should be going somewhere in the middle of the second round. So DeAndre Hopkins, other than Antonio Brown, I think he's the closest thing to AB that we have. We've seen what he can do with good quarterback play. And Deshaun Watson has looked better than I anticipated in preseason. So that's another reason why I'm bumping up Hopkins a little bit. Then getting to round number 2, I'm doubling up on the wide receivers on Team 12, adding Odell Beckham. And immediately, this is the best tandem of wide receivers at an elite level for sure. It's going to set this team apart. It's going to have to make up some ground later on with the running backs, but I do think the wide receivers can carry this team, and Odell Beckham is another elite wide receiver. The fact that he was injured last year, kind of drops his value maybe a little bit towards the early second round, which honestly I think is a steal, and I'm very happy with this pick. Then team number 11, since we already got a running back number 1, I'm going another wide receiver number 1 in Julio Jones. I think this is how it has to go until those 3 guys after Antonio Brown are selected. And Julio Jones is the last of the bunch for me. I think his production will go back up with that offense having another year with their offensive coordinator. So I anticipate big things for that Atlanta offense. Going back to team number 10, already had Leonard Fournette, now adding Christian McCaffrey. Now, again, I will say this, PPR-wise, I don't think this is a bad spot to draft him. Maybe a little bit lower, middle of the second round, but regardless, if it were standard, though, however, I'm going to go ahead and probably wait until the end of the second round until I start considering Christian McCaffrey, just because so much of his value comes as a pass catcher. Now, the Panthers are saying they're going to use him more as a traditional running back, but CJ Anderson's presence there and Cam's presence in the goal line does make you wonder twice. But as far as PPR is concerned, I like him at this spot pairing up with Leonard Fournette. Then going back to team number 9, I'm going with Keenan Allen, a PPR wide receiver stud, a guy that I was really high on last year. And a big reason was the value, because he was going right around the early 3rd round, and that was incredible value. Once he stayed healthy, he reminded us all of what we can do. Now he's up to an early 2nd round selection. Again, probably a guy that I would devalue a little bit if it were a standard league, but if he stays healthy, that's always the big thing. I think he will be a very good, probably top 10 wide receiver. Going to team number 8, I have got Michael Thomas. And it's not that I don't like Michael Thomas, that I'm waiting to draft him here a little bit, but I just think that Saints offense is going to be predicated on the run after all the success it had last year and the fact that Drew Brees is getting older. And the Saints probably want to preserve him a little bit more so that they have a franchise quarterback not only for this year. But regardless, Michael Thomas has been getting better year in, year out, so I fully expect him to continue on that trend and to stay in the top 10 wide receiver category. Then going back to team number 7, this is where it gets interesting because this was the team that went with the first wide receiver selection, Antonio Brown. Now got to go with the next best available running back, and to me that's Devonta Freeman, because if we avoid the running back position here, then it's going to get pretty dire going into the 3rd round. I think Freeman, similar to Julio Jones, is a guy that's going to bounce back. He did, however, deal with more of an injury last year, and when healthy, I do think this is a pretty good value for Freeman, middle of the 2nd round. I like his potential as a pass catcher, as a guy at the goal line, and again, with an extra year on that offense, with the offensive coordinator, I think everyone on that Atlanta team offensively is going to do great things. Team number 6 already had a running back number 1 in Kamara. Now going to add a wide receiver number 1 potential with Davante Adams. Adams is getting some more love than maybe I'm comfortable with, but it's hard to debate that when you have Aaron Rodgers throwing you the football. A guy that I like a little bit more in standard leagues. He has the high touchdown potential. It'll be interesting to see what kind of connection Rodgers develops with Jimmy Graham. But Davante Adams is one of the guys he's most comfortable with, along with Randall Cobb, who I'm also very high on. Team 5, I'm going back to the wide receiver position here, adding another wide receiver 1 to a running back 1 in AJ Green. I think the Cincinnati offense bounces back. The Bengals address the issues on the offensive line. That's going to allow them to run the ball better. It's going to allow Andy Dalton to have more time to get the ball to AJ Green, which is going to result in a happy AJ Green and happy fantasy owners. Team number 4, I'm going Rob Gronkowski. And look, I think at this point it becomes, do you draft probably a running back number 2 kind of guy, or do you go with the best player available at the tight end position and kind of differentiate yourself? A guy that can pretty much put up wide receiver number 1 numbers, and that's what I'm electing to do with Rob Gronkowski. Team number 3, I'm going Jerick McKinnon, a guy that is, again, better suited for PPR leagues and does have some durability concerns, but obviously he avoided major injury. I think he'll be ready for week 1. All reports are, he's very involved in that offense. He's catching everything that's thrown at him, and I do think the 49ers are going to use him considering how much money they paid to get Jerick McKinnon. Next, pairing up David Johnson with Doug Baldwin. That's the selection here for Team 2. I love what Doug Baldwin can do. Honestly, I've said it before, I'll say it again. I think he has the highest ceiling of any wide receiver in 2018. Paul Richardson gone. Jimmy Graham gone. Look at his stats the last time it was a similar situation. Doug Baldwin dominated. He's the favorite target of Russell Wilson, and even more so now. I love Doug Baldwin, wide receiver number 1 potential. Team number 1, finishing off the 2nd round, I'm going Stefon Diggs. And again, this is predicated on the Kirk Cousins edition. I think Diggs' playmaking abilities very well suit what Kirk Cousins likes to do. Throw the football down the field. Diggs is a physical, big guy that I think will excel in those deep balls and in the red zone in general. Getting to round number 3, I am going with another running back here in Joe Mixon, addressing, to me, one of the second most important positions in football, and that's the second running back slot. And like I said with AJ Green, I think Joe Mixon is going to benefit a lot from the improved offensive line of Bengals. We saw it last year when the other guys were hurt. Joe Mixon stepped up. He produced passing game, running game, red zone game. And with Jeremy Hill gone, I think Joe Mixon controls that backfield. and I do see good things for Mixon in 2018. Looking at team number 2 again, I'm adding Jordan Howard and complementing him with David Johnson from before and Doug Baldwin. Look, Jordan Howard, definitely more of a standard guy, but he's probably good for, over 1,000 yards rushing. He won't get you that many receptions, so it's a little bit of a downfall in PPR settings, but regardless, I think he's the best offensive player that the Bears have. Team number 3, I'm adding Mike Evans, and Evans is a guy that I'm a little bit wary of, but at this point becomes a very nice value pick because, look, last year he was going in the middle of the first round, end of the first round. Now, towards the end of the second round, for me, start of the third round, I'm just wary of that Bucs offense. I think there's a lot of question marks there. I'm not too comfortable with the Jameis Winston situation, his suspension, whether he's going to have more issues moving forward. That's why I've got Mike Evans ranked over here. Going to team number 4, I'm picking T.Y. Hilton as my first wide receiver. And look, I already have a great pass catcher in Rob Gronkowski. Why not add another one with T.Y. Hilton with Andrew Luck back? I think T.Y. gets back to right around top 10 wide receiver category, maybe right outside, but he's by far the best wide receiver that the Colts have. And I think with luck there, he will be back to a more consistent player. Team number 5, adding Adam Thielen. And Thielen has been on the rise these last couple of years, outperforming every other wide receiver for the Vikings. But again, I do think Kirk Cousins, obviously, this is probably the best offense he's ever played on, the best group of guys he's played with. But I do think Diggs is more of that guy that he's accustomed to. Nonetheless, I do expect Thielen to be a guy he goes to often. Team number 6, going with Zach Ertz. Similar to what we did with the Gronkowski situation, I'm going to go ahead and add one of the better pass-catching tight ends, and especially with Alshon Jeffrey gone now, I really like what Zach Ertz can bring to the table. He was already Carson Wentz's favorite target, and now I think that'll be even more so the case. Team number 7, I'm adding LeSean McCoy, and somewhat of an insurance pick. LeSean McCoy, admittedly so, not on my preferred list of players to target. If anything, he's in my do not touch list. But when you go wide receiver with the first pick in the first round, or with your first pick in the first round, I think you got to go for high upside running backs. And LeSean McCoy is that, but he's also a very low floor kind of guy. I'm not too comfortable with the Bills' offense, but the PPR aspect does help salvage the situation a little bit for LeSean McCoy. Then going to team number 8, I'm going Travis Kelce, and similar to what I've said before, if I can go ahead and get a difference maker at the tight end position, I do value that probably a little bit more than some other people. And with Patrick Mahomes being the new quarterback for the Chiefs, I think the safety blanket in Kelce will be a big part in getting him comfortable and result in a nice stat line for Kelce moving forward. Team number 9, look, I've already got Keenan Allen, a PPR stud. Why not add another PPR stud in Jarvis Landry? Man, I'm really high on Jarvis Landry. Obviously, Josh Gordon is going to be returning, but we don't know that situation fully. He's expected to play. I'll treat it as if he's going to play a full 16 games. But I was high on Landry even before those Josh Gordon news broke. I think all reports coming out of camp is that he has been the man on that offense, and he's always been a PPR stud, a target monster, and I think that'll continue for whoever the quarterback in Cleveland ends up being. And speaking of his teammate Josh Gordon, going to team number 10, and after targeting 2 running backs in the first 2 rounds, got to go with a high upside wide receiver, and that's exactly what Josh Gordon is. If he stays healthy for a full 16 games on the field, we know what he did in a limited time span a few years back, and he's got the potential. Definitely a high ceiling wide receiver. If you want to go ahead and risk a 3rd round pick on him in this kind of situation, I'm more than comfortable doing so. Team number 11, I'm adding Kenyan Drake in a little bit of an insurance pick, I'd say, with the Kareem Hunt first pick in the first round, because I think Kenyan Drake can be a really good running back in PPR formats. We saw what he did last year. I'm not too worried about the Frank Gore edition. I think Drake is the clear-cut number 1 running back. And pairing him up with Kareem Hunt here, I think pretty decent value. Ending things off in the 3rd round, I'm adding Derrick Henry. And this is kind of where the scramble begins a little bit because, admittedly so, I'm not the biggest fan of Derrick Henry. Maybe a little bit of a reach at the end of the 3rd round, but I do think you have to go running back here after addressing the wide receiver spot with the first 2 picks. Henry definitely does have potential, but it will be limited by Dion Lewis. I do think Henry is the more preferred option. He will get, when it's all said and done, some more opportunities. That's why I'm going to go ahead and pick Henry here. Going to the 4th round, we're looking at the addition of Tyreek Hill at the flex spot for team number 12. I think at this point it just becomes a very good value pick. Look, I'm not worried by the Sammy Watkins addition to the Chiefs at all. That guy is the definition of inconsistent and injury prone. And Tyreek Hill, even though he's more of a big play guy, that combined with the arm that Patrick Mahomes had, I do expect a good chemistry to be formed between these 2 guys. Then going back to team number 11, I'm going Larry Fitzgerald. Pairing him up with Julio Jones, I think is a really nice combo. Fitz, more of that PPR scoring guy, is going to definitely get plenty of targets. He's the best wide receiver on that team by far. And even if there are weeks where he has, an off game, I'm not too worried about it considering I have Julio Jones as my wide receiver number 1. Team number 10, I am adding Aaron Rodgers. And, beginning part of the 4th round, adding Aaron Rodgers, I don't think that's too big of a reach. Normally, I say wait on the quarterbacks, but at this point, again, I'm going to try and differentiate myself from all the other quarterback selections by going ahead and selecting the best quarterback by far in Rodgers. Team number 9, adding Lamar Miller. And look, I think I've said it before, this is the year. This is the make it or break it year for Lamar Miller. If he can't get it right this year, I don't think he ever will. Maybe a little bit early towards the middle of the 4th round, but I do think he has a lot of potential. He'll have potential in the passing game. He'll have potential in the running game, especially if the Texans don't want to necessarily rush Deshaun Watson into things. Miller will get more opportunities as a runner. Then going back to team number 8, I'm going Demaryius Thomas here. And man, Demaryius Thomas, back when Peyton Manning was there in his prime for the Broncos, this guy was a top 5 wide receiver, right around there. But man, how things have changed. I do think Case Keenum is better than what the Broncos had before. It'll be interesting to see what Demaryius Thomas could do. He's definitely got the build and the kind of playing style where he can dominate. It'll come down to quarterback play, but at this point, middle of the 4th round, I think it's a good value pick. Same situation for Team 7 here with Amari Cooper. I like Cooper. He didn't have the most consistent year in 2017, but now with Michael Crabtree gone, I do think that offense is his to command as far as a number 1 wide receiver goes. I realize Martavius Bryant is there. I realize Jordy Nelson is there. But John Gruden has gone on record saying how much he likes Amari Cooper. Makes me feel a little bit better. And again, I think a very nice value pick here. Team number 6, going with Juju Smith-Schuster. And with Juju Smith, I think a lot of players loved what they saw from him in 2017, especially the end of 2017, myself included. I think he's a guy that can potentially be a top 15 wide receiver. That offense in Pittsburgh is going to be so potent that it doesn't make me question whether Juju is going to have opportunities. Those will be aplenty, and I really like him as a wide receiver number 2 on your roster. Then going to team number 5, I'm adding old reliable Golden Tate PPR wide receiver. Definitely gets a boost because this is PPR. I think the amount of time Stafford distributes the football helps, and having Golden Tate as a flex player, I think, is a really nice perk to have. And speaking of the Lions wide receivers, team number 4, going with Marvin Jones, the teammate of Golden Tate. I love what Marvin Jones can do. I love the chemistry I saw last year with him and Matthew Stafford. I think he can potentially become the best wide receiver for the Lions, that big play wide receiver. I really like him as an upside wide receiver number 2. Team number 3, going with Allen Robinson. And look, I've been on record saying I'm not high on Allen Robinson. I'm not high on the Bears. And there's 2 reasons for Allen Robinson. One is that he plays on the Bears, more specifically with Mitchell Trubisky, who I have zero faith in. And then he's coming off a very serious injury. Look, he's coming off an ACL injury, and that's nothing to glance over. And all those combinations give me a lot of reasons to worry when it comes to Allen Robinson. But again, the end of the 4th round I think is very good value for Allen Robinson. So combining 2 upside wide receivers here after going back-to-back running backs in the first 2 rounds. Team number 2, going with Chris Hogan. I think Chris Hogan is going to be a popular option with Julian Edelman gone. Besides Rob Gronkowski, Hogan is the guy that Tom Brady is most familiar with, and I don't think things will change terribly too much once Edelman returns. And then with the last pick in the 4th round, I'm going Greg Olsen. After the top 3 guys have gone, I'm going to go with Olsen. I think there is a little bit of a drop-off in tight end play afterwards. That's why I'm going to go ahead and secure my tight end here. Going on to round number 5. First pick in round number 5 is Randall Cobb. And I told you guys, I love Randall Cobb. I love the potential here. Maybe you call this a reach, but I think, if anything, man, this is probably the best pick in this round, because what Randall Cobb can do with a healthy Aaron Rodgers in PPR formats, I'm giddy about. I think he can potentially finish as a top 15 wide receiver. Team number 2, I'm going Royce Freeman, and I think it's a luxury having 3 running backs when you can use one at the flex position. And after Saquon Barkley and after the unfortunate Darius Geisen injury, I think Royce Freeman becomes the next best rookie running back. It'll all come down to, at the end, I think, how Case Keenum performs, and that's what's going to decide how Royce Freeman performs. Team number 3, I'm going with Rex Burkhead, and honestly, even though it's a crowded backfield for the Pats, I think Burkhead is going to be the most reliable guy. Dion Lewis is gone, Sony Michel can't stay healthy, and Burkhead, well, he's just going to pick up where he left off last year, and that's getting those goal line carries. That's being a factor in the passing game as well from time to time, and I think he's going to take hold of that position and not let go, so I really like him as a flex play. Team number 4, going with Jay Ajayi, and look, obviously there's a drop-off from Gurley to Jay Ajayi, but I do think the fact that I had Todd Gurley here allows some wiggle room with the next running back selection. Ajayi is a guy that has some potential, but at the same time some worries. With him, he should be the number 1 running back with LeGarrette Blount gone. But at the same time, I do think the Eagles are more of a passing team. He's also not that involved in the passing game either. So it'll be interesting to see what will be the production coming out of Jay Ajayi in the future. Team number 5, going with Alex Collins, and desperately had to address the running back position here in my opinion. Went with Saquon Barkley first and then hit the pass catchers. Alex Collins, a guy that, again, I'm iffy on, but I think he's the next best running back. Good value in the 5th round. That's the main driving force here. If he can stay the number 1 running back for the Ravens, I do like his potential. Team number 6, going with Marshawn Lynch. And honestly, I'm predicting that this will probably be the last year of beast mode. But look, what better offense to go ahead and finish your career in, potentially, than the Raiders, the old school Raiders, with John Gruden, a guy that loves smash mouth football, invested picks in that offensive line, loves to run the football. I think Marshawn Lynch could potentially have a really nice season in 2018. Team number 7, I'm going with Kyle Rudolph. And again, I mentioned this, all goes back to Kirk Cousins. I think after Greg Olsen, Kyle Rudolph is going to be the next best available tight end. Team number 8, I'm going with Russell Wilson. And at this point, towards the end of the 5th round, I think Russell Wilson is a nice value pick. To me, he's the 2nd best quarterback after Aaron Rodgers. He's mobile, he's accurate, and that's something you got to love about Russell Wilson. And speaking of quarterbacks, the run continues with team number 9 taking Deshaun Watson. I'm a big fan of the quarterback-running back combination. That's one of the reasons Watson goes here. He's looked better in the preseason than I expected. I think it looks like he's rebounding nicely from that injury. He's got plenty of weapons around him. So I'm going to go ahead and get Watson right here. Team number 10, going with Brandon Cooks. And at this point, Cooks was becoming a little bit hard to ignore. The Rams went ahead, paid him a lot of money, so he should get usage. Makes me a little bit nervous that he's more of that big play threat down the field. So not necessarily a volume guy, but a big play guy. I definitely do think it's kind of a decrease when it comes to who you're going from in 2017, Tom Brady, to Jared Goff throwing you the football. But after addressing the running back positions in the first 2 rounds, have to go with high upside guys, which Brandon Cooks definitely is. Team number 11, going with Dion Lewis at the flex spot, and I think Lewis at the flex spot is reasonable. I wouldn't feel comfortable with him as a running back 1 or running back number 2, but again, more of a pass-catching running back that's been said going to be the 1B option to the 1A of Derrick Henry, so I don't mind Dion Lewis as my flex player here. In the last pick of the 5th round, I'm going Tom Brady. Going to go ahead and secure the next best available quarterback who's going to have, a lot of weapons around him with Gronkowski, Chris Hogan, Rex Burkhead, and then Julian Edelman once he returns. Going to round number 6, going with Mark Ingram here, and I'm putting him on the bench because obviously he starts the season with a 4-game suspension. But once he returns, I do think he could potentially end up being better than Derrick Henry, who was our selection in the 3rd round. So I'm not sleeping on Mark Ingram. Start of the 6th round, I think, considering the situation here, the pick makes sense. Team number 11, going with Julian Edelman, and I mentioned him before as well. Even though he's got a 4-game suspension, I think once he comes back, once he gets that rust off, you could elevate him easily from your bench to your flex to maybe even a wide receiver number 2 in PPR formats. Team number 10, going with Robbie Anderson, and I kind of find it a little bit weird that Robbie Anderson is one of these later picks considering what he did last year, and I still think he's the best wide receiver the Jets have. Whoever ends up throwing him the football as a flex player here, I really like the potential of Robbie Anderson. Then going with Jordan Reed for team number 9, and man, a lot of people hate Jordan Reed because he can't stay healthy, but I'm going out on a limb. I'm going to say this is finally the year that Jordan Reed stays healthy for an entire season. And if he can do that, he's going to be a top 5 tight end. Mark my words. I love the value of Jordan Reed in the 6th round. Then going back to team number 8, I'm going with Ronald Jones. And after going with Melvin Gordon in the 1st round, got to go with another running back here at this point. Ronald Jones, I'm a little bit iffy on, well, a lot of bit iffy, but got to address the running back position, and him being potentially the number 1 guy for the Bucs, I'm going to go ahead, use this pick on him. The Bucs invested a high round pick in Ronald Jones, and I think he can deliver to some point with that. Maybe not right away, but after a couple games into the season. Then, moving on, adding Cam Newton here. Need a quarterback. It's either a flex or a bench spot. I think there's a little bit more value in Cam Newton here at the middle part of the 6th round. Someone that can get it done through the air and on the ground. Then team number 6, adding Carson Wentz. And if Carson Wentz can play, starting week 1, which all signs point to that he can, I think he comes back, picks up right where he left off last year, and that was an MVP caliber year. Then, again, another quarterback, going with Kirk Cousins here. I love the situation Kirk Cousins finds himself in. Great defense, so many playmakers around him. I think he finishes as probably close to a top 5, right outside a top 5 quarterback. Then team 4, going ahead and adding Emmanuel Sanders as the flex spot. I think in PPR leagues, he can go ahead and provide you a nice spark at that flex spot. I do think, like I said before, Case Keenum is an upgrade to what the Broncos have had at the quarterback position compared to last year. Then team number 3, going with Jimmy Graham here. I do think Jimmy Graham has the potential with Aaron Rodgers. I think any tight end with Aaron Rodgers has the potential. Jimmy Graham was a nice red zone threat for Russell Wilson. I think he can be the same for Aaron Rodgers. Team number 2, going with Cooper Kupp, and I think this is a little bit of a luxury pick, but I love the potential of Cooper Kupp. I think, he was one of the best receivers out of the rookie class last year, and PPR-wise, again, a guy that I really like. I was a little bit bummed out to see Brandon Cooks join the Rams, because if he didn't, Cooper Kupp, in my drafts at least, on my teams, would have been going a lot earlier for me personally. And then the last pick here in the 6th round, I'm going with Kenny Stills. I think Stills is going to be the best player for the Dolphins offensively as far as the pass catchers go, because I'm not sold on Devontae Parker at all. He's had every chance to go ahead and be the guy. He hasn't taken it. He's got a broken finger now. So Kenny Stills, I think, not only has he been getting better year in and year out these last couple of seasons, but also he's got that big play threat as well. Getting to round number 7 now, adding Jimmy Garoppolo here, pretty much starting to fill out the end of this roster. I've loved what I've seen from Garoppolo these last few preseason games, and then what we saw towards the end of last season. I'm going to go ahead and invest a pick in him here. Team number 2, going with Delanie Walker, needed to address the tight end spot. Going with an oldie but reliable in Delanie Walker, probably the best pass catcher that Marcus Mariota has around him. Team number 3, going with Ben Roethlisberger, and like I said, I love the quarterback-running back combination, and that's exactly what this is, the Big Ben to LeVeon Bell connection. Team number 4, going with Andrew Luck, and again, quarterback to wide receiver combination this time, but regardless, healthy Andrew Luck finishes as a top 10 quarterback. Team number 5, here going with Jack Doyle, again to fill out the tight end spot, and similar to T.Y. Hilton, similar to all the pass catchers for the Colts, they get exponentially better when Andrew Luck is there. Team number 6, got to go with Marquise Goodwin here at the flex spot. I think this is a really nice opportunity for Marquise Goodwin as a flex player. Potentially he can be a wide receiver number 2 even. I think he's the favorite target of Jimmy Garoppolo. We saw it last year. He's got the speed that kills, and I really like Marquise Goodwin in 2018. Team number 7, going with Chris Thompson, and look, I'll put an asterisk next to this one because there's so many injuries in that Redskins backfield, but at some point I do expect, maybe it's not the first or second week, but Chris Thompson is going to be available at some point early in the season. That's my opinion. If not, scratch this name out for whoever emerges as the number 1 guy for the Redskins. But Chris Thompson, I love what he can do as a PPR option, and we saw it last year before his injury. Team number 8, going with Nelson Agholor, and this has a lot to do with the Alshon Jeffrey news about him going on the PUP list. Without Jeffrey, to me, Agholor becomes the best wide receiver that the Eagles have. Team number 9, going with Chris Carson as the flex play, and look, all the news coming out of Seattle is even before the Penny injury, Chris Carson was playing better, and now with Penny hurt, I think Carson is going to have every opportunity. He looked like the guy before his injury last year, and I think he's going to be able to take advantage of that. Love him as far as value goes for a flex spot here. Team number 10, going with Trey Burton. I've been pleasantly surprised with the connection that Burton has had with Mitchell Trubisky. I'll be the first to say it. And, you know, he will be used in the red zone. We saw it in preseason. So, you know, taking a fly on Trey Burton, maybe not a bad idea at this point. Team number 11, going with Evan Ingram. I think he's the next best tight end, but at the same time, be wary with Ingram. I think what happened last year, you know, is going to be very hard to duplicate again, considering that took every single wide receiver to get hurt for the Giants. Don't think that's going to happen again, but still, Evan Ingram, at least he did build some type of chemistry with Eli Manning last year. And the last pick here, I'm going with Marlon Mack. I think Mack is a guy that has a lot of potential. He's got some nagging injuries right now, but I do think out of the group of running backs the Colts have, he has the highest ceiling. And, you know, I think we saw a lot of that explosiveness last year when Frank Gore was there. Now it's a matter of if Marlon Mack can just stay healthy and hold on to that job. Now finally getting to round number 8, finishing things off. Here, got to fill the tight end position, so I'm going Tyler Eifert. Again, a guy, if he can stay healthy, he's the best tight end option for the Bengals. Behind A.J. Green, he's the best pass catcher on that squad. Team number 11, finishing things off with Drew Brees. I think a nice value pick at this point, a guy that can still air it out. Team number 10, I'm going with Corey Davis, probably the best wide receiver that the Titans have. Struggled with some injuries last year, but again, I think a nice spot considering I'm drafting him as a bench player. Team number 9, going with Duke Johnson, and again, somewhat of a luxury pick here. I think he's going to end up being the best running back, at least PPR-wise, that the Browns have. So in a PPR format, I feel somewhat comfortable taking him and using him maybe as a flex guy if need be. Team number 8, going with Rashad Penny, and at this point, this kind of becomes a future investment pick for when Penny does come back, and kind of banking on the fact that maybe that the Seahawks go ahead and give him some opportunities too, just because he was a first-round pick. Team number 7, going with Tariq Cohen, and again, in PPR leagues, a lot more valuable Tariq Cohen is. He's a guy that can go ahead and be a very good weapon for the Bears. You know, he's got great hands. He's got a lot of abilities in the open field as well. Team number 6, going with Tavon Coleman, finishing off the bench spot. And with Coleman, if Devonta Freeman gets hurt, watch out. We saw it last year. And Tavon Coleman, an offense that should be re-energized, I think he's going to have some opportunities. Team number 5, going with Jamal Williams, and I think this could be a potentially steal of a pick here, because if Jamal Williams ends up being the number 1 running back for the Packers, I think he'll hold on to that role and have plenty of opportunities, especially in the red zone. Now, the question is, will he go ahead and hold on to that role with Aaron Jones suspended the first couple of games? It'll be interesting to see what happens after the Aaron Jones suspension runs out. Team number 4, going with Will Fuller, and we saw with Will Fuller when Deshaun Watson was there, some nice chemistry. I don't think what they started was sustainable, but nonetheless, as a bench guy, I do like the potential of Will Fuller. Then Team 3, a guy that I really like, DJ Moore for the Panthers. I think he's already the best wide receiver the Panthers have, to be honest with you. I think he's going to be the best rookie wide receiver out of this class, and I do think he's going to end up being a rotational flex guy at some point during the season. Team number 2, getting to the quarterback position in Matt Ryan. And I think Matt Ryan with the Falcons, like I said before, that offense is going to rebound. And I think Matt Ryan rebounds as well. And finally, the last pick of this draft, Michael Crabtree of now the Baltimore Ravens. Going from the Raiders to the Ravens, I think he's already the best receiver that the Ravens have. So a little bit of potential pick here. High ceiling, low floor. But as a bench guy, Crabtree is someone that I like. So with that, we finish up this exercise. And now, as always, let me know what you guys think. Did you enjoy this? What roster do you think, if any, stood out to you? Would you have guys gone about the same way with the drafting process? Was there any pick that seemed way too egregious to you, or analysis that you agreed with? Let me know in the comment section, along with any questions fantasy related as well. And as always, if you guys enjoyed, make sure to like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in future videos.